Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Khan.
Walaikum salam, brother.
Thank you for taking some time to talk to me today.
My pleasure.
And just for our viewers, can you please introduce yourself with your full name and tell us a little bit of where you were born, when, and your history?
Yeah. My name is Husman Khan. I was born in Guyana, May 2nd, 1946, my date of birth. My early years, I was born actually in Georgetown, but grew up in Buxton on the east coast of Demerara. And then later on we moved to Kitty, lived in Georgetown for many years, and then finally we moved to Kitty, Station Street, Kitty. During my time in Guyana, we were very involved. My grandfather was an imam on the East Coast. He was also, for quite a number of years, a member of the Ulma board of in Guyana. And I spent many happy days going around with him, accompanying him on his many trips. Most of his weekends were spent going from village to village, mediating in disputes between individuals and various jamaats, and these were ongoing. I was very little at that time, and I didn't have a lot of insight into what exactly the issues were, but I was well aware that people sought his input and his wisdom in many of these issues that were prevailing. And I knew that at the end of the day, he was able to, whether because of his knowledge of Islam, or whether it was because of his ability to mediate in situations, most of these things were resolved amicably among the various parties. So those were my early days in involvement in Islam, and I would accompany him. I would, much to the disgust of my grandmother, who always worried about what I'm going to eat while I was away. She was more concerned with, why are you taking him? He's not part of the, but my grandfather said, well, let him come along. He wants to come along. And that was my involvement. Later on, as I went on to high school, I went to Central High, and then I went to Queens College. I got less involved, and I was, my father was also, involved in some of these Islamic work. We attended Kitty Masjid.
Okay.
And Imam Yusuf, I must say he's one of my mentors. He's still alive in Canada, in Toronto. He got me in one of I was already residing in Florida at that time. He gave me an introduction to Islam. I don't remember the name of the author now, but I've since given that book to one of my nephews. And after reading that book, I was quite motivated, in the sense that even though I grew up in Islam, I did not have a broad view, an overall view of what is involved in the day-to-day activities, and it gave me a big picture. So I always thank him for that, and that book set me off reading so many other books that were referenced in that book, and that got me started. But when I came to Florida, I was in New York for several years, 4 or 5 years.
So what took you from Guyana to New York?
Yeah. Well, my brother was living in New York, and when I came back from India after graduating from medical school, it was 1972. So by 1973, I went back to Guyana, did a year at Georgetown Hospital, internship, and I had no real intention of coming to the United States. For some reason, I was not keyed into it, but being in a British country, I always thought of going for postgraduate studies in England as opposed to the United States.
Yeah.
But because of the political atmosphere at the time in Guyana, we and my brothers in the United States, I decided to come to the United States because a funny thing happened. There was an exam that you had to take in those days called the Educational Council for Foreign Medical Graduates, ECFMG, and it was, when you're just come out of medical school, it's quite a difficult exam. But I took it in Guyana. You could have taken it in Guyana. I took it in Guyana, and I was successful, and that's how I got thinking of coming to the United States. And then in those days in Guyana, there were a lot of Filipino doctors, and all of them had the idea. Guyana was a kind of first landing, and with the idea of taking the exam and coming. In that year, I think there were 2 people who passed the exam in the whole bunch of nearly 50, 100 people. And when you pass, the council send you a lot of literature, what's the next step and so on. I never really read it. I was so elated about passing because I said to myself, I'll take it and see what it's like, and then I'll make a better try the next time.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. So all the literature stayed on my desk, and suddenly one day in the hospital, one of the Filipino doctors asked me, when am I going to the United States? So I said, what do you mean going to? I said, I don't have any plans of going. He said, but you passed the exam, what are you going to do? He said, you didn't read the book? I said, which book? So I said, So I went home that day and read the book, and I realized that this exam was just to get you into residency programs in the United States. So now you had to go and apply. And to make the story short, when I came to the United States to apply, it was nearly 6 months too late. You have to apply at a certain time when you can start the residency program here in July.
Yeah.
So I lost a year. So during that time, I came, did many interviews, got into the hospital in New York to do my internship, and that started it off. I even went back to Guyana and spent about 6 months before I came back. I worked at Mercy Hospital. So when I came back, did my internship, did my residency in New Jersey, and then finally ended up in Florida because I had a friend in Florida who had been with me in the hospital in New York, and he moved to Florida, University of Miami. So he said to me, listen, I know you're planning to go back home because you don't like the climate, you don't like the weather. And he knew that I didn't like the cold weather in New York and New Jersey, snow and all that. So he said, come to Miami, come to Florida, come for a visit and see if you like it. So I came in the month of February, or more March, was it? February, March, early, it was winter. And when I arrived in Miami, I saw people walking around with short sleeve shirt. I saw palm trees. I said, man, why are people living in any other part of the country? So I went back to New Jersey, and there are a lot of other incidents that forced the issue, but eventually I sent out applications to Florida, and I came to Florida, ended up in Florida in 1978.
Okay.
And started working. And once I came to Florida, my brothers and my parents, who had recently migrated also to the United States, they came, they saw the weather, they decided they want to come.
Yeah.
So everybody came down here. My two brothers, my father, my mother. And my father was always, he was a explorer. He would always be checking up people that he knew in Guyana, where they are. He would meet this person, meet that person. And time after time, he met a lot of Guyanese that some of whom he knew, some of whom he didn't know. And there was no masjid at that time in the area. The only masjid that we were aware of was Miami Gardens, what they call 183rd Street Masjid. And it was run largely by Pakistanis. And we all attended, we used to attend and here and there. And he would go around, and what kept everything going in those early days, as I remember, was the regular Quran Sharif circuit.
Yeah.
This person would have a Quranic reading, they will invite you, that one will have, you would have. And so, it kept the whole thing going, and the imams would give their little lectures, and everybody got involved, and you would have a function this week, somebody else would have another week, and it kept everything. Cherry Bay was a center of activity. Cherry Bay is in North Miami there. And a lot of Guyanese who came to Florida initially in that time, bought homes in Cherry Bay.
Okay.
And they were living, so that was like the center of activities. A lot of people were living in that area, and we would go to a lot of functions in Cherry Bay. Of course, the emphasis was eventually that we would get some place of our own.
Yeah.
We would build our own masjid, we would do this and that, and I don't want to use the word persecuted, but we were not, we didn't feel welcome in some of the masjids.
Yeah.
We had our peculiar ways of conducting functions, and which was reminiscent of what we used to do back home.
Yeah.
They read the munajat, they would read the what do you call it, the name is not coming to me, the Urdu, the Urdu songs and things like that. So we eventually thought that one day we are going to do this on our own. And others might have told you, but the actual funds were hard to come by in those days. I was not involved in a lot of fundraising at that point. I would make a donation, but I was never involved in the running of things. And they started a little group, and in those early days, the people that I remember that were involved were Haji Amir Khan, your father-in-law, Yasin Mohammed. I don't remember if Yunus was there at that time. I think Yunus came somewhat later. But there were several others. There were Trinidadians. Haji Dean comes to mind. Some of the others that were living in Miami, I don't remember all their names now. I've forgotten their names. But there were quite a few prominent Trinidadians that lived in Miami and were people who were involved. We would invite them, and they will come. So it was a vibrant start to the community. That went on for quite a while, year, 2 years, 3 years, and eventually another person I have to remember is Assad Ishuf, and his family were involved. Halima, and there was a South African Imam Ustad Beg who was teaching the kids in Miami, and then he came over to our area also and continued his teaching. So those were the people that I remember in those early days. Now, how did I get involved? By 1979, I would say, I started attending more and more of these functions, and still my work, day-to-day work, I was so busy with that I didn't have time to be involved in any kind of, but I would come from time to time. They will invite me. My father will call me up and say, there's a function here, a function there, and we'll go. I'll take my children also. My wife would go, and we would attend. And sometimes, it started with people preparing some meal, or this one will make roti, that one will make the curry, that one will make this. And so it was, by the time you get to the place, it was quite a feast. Yeah. So those are the things that kept us going. And a lot of people were in and out. A lot of people, I remember, came to Florida because of the weather. Mm-hmm. And then many people bought homes in Florida, but they had no jobs. When they came and then they realized they occupy the home, they have a mortgage or whatever, they have to sustain that home. Yeah. Where's the job? There's no job. So in those days, Florida didn't have a lot of jobs of any substance. Yeah. So many of them sold their homes, moved back to New York or whatever. And then we had another wave in the 80s where people, real estate, I don't remember which year, but New York real estate went up a lot. So many people were able to sell their homes that they might have bought for $100,000, $200,000 for $600,000 and $700,000, and then they have extra money. Yeah. So they come and buy a house in Florida. So that's how more and more Guyanese and Trinidadians and West Indians moved into the area. Yeah. In the meantime, there were influx of Pakistanis and other groups. The Bangladesh people were not here at that point. They might have been in a minority, but they're not many. We had a few Arabs, Syrians, and that sort of thing. But that was the nucleus that started the whole. The idea of my getting involved, it was probably around the 80s, I would say, early 80s, where there were a few brothers who came to me and said, listen, you are making donations to this organization, and you should get involved and take part in the somehow in the running of it. And I said, no, I really am not. I don't have the time, and I don't know anything much about running organizations. So I would stay away from that. I'd be happy to donate, to advise, but I don't want to be involved. And then there upon that scene, I don't recall exactly the year, but it had to be in the early 80s, Jamal Haq, Yusuf Muhammad, Alan Baksh was not on the scene at that time. He came much later. He came in the 90s, or late 90s or mid 90s. And a few others, I can't remember all of them now. They came to me and said, listen, you need to get involved. And they would come to my house night after night. this same house, actually, by that time I had moved into this house. So it has to be mid-80s already, because I moved here, I think, in 85. So we would have meetings, they would come, I'll come from work at 9, 10 o'clock at night, they will be here waiting for me. We prepare tea, we prepare dinner, we sit down, we talk, get into 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and say, guys, I got to work tomorrow, and it will go. So finally, little by little, we started formulating plans. There was already, by that time, there was some kind of an organization called Nur Ul Islam, which we didn't even know the Arabic terminology to name the organization properly. In Arabic, you have to, the al or whatever has to go with the correct noun. So they had that, somebody put together a set of bylaws, and they had something going. There was a sheikh, Arab sheikh. His name was Sheikh Al-Fazi. I don't know if you've heard that term, but others might have mentioned the name. Sheikh Al-Fazi was living in Miami on Fish Island, wealthy man, and he would make donations from time to time to different organizations. He used to make donations even to Jewish organizations. And he made a donation. Some of the brothers, I don't know who all went down. I was not among them, but I know your father-in-law, Yasin, went. I'm sure he was involved in it. Went down, and they got $20,000 donated. Yeah, and they had some money in the coffers by that time.
Yeah.
But a funny thing happened. A man came along who was involved in the executive. I think he was an executive member. I don't want to say from where he was, but he, at that time, the rule was, in order to do anything financially, you had to have 2 signatures.
Okay.
And this man came along and convinced, this was Uncle Hanif. You might hear that term. He was a mover and a shaker at that time. He was from Bartica. Uncle Hanif was related to Nadir, Nadir Khan. And he was a good donor also. He had businesses in town and all that. And he, somehow or the other, 2 people signed. And $20,000 was loaned to this man, supposedly to be paid back in a short while. I am not sure exactly why he needed the money, but there was some good reason. He convinced them that he would be able to pay back the money in a short time. It turns out the money was not paid back in the allotted time. And a lot of people didn't know about this transaction. And when people got to know about it, they were very upset. And in the end, the man was never able to repay the money. I think he repaid, with all good intentions, he paid back a part of it. Maybe 10,000, maybe 15,000, I don't recall the details of that. But those were the initial funds, the $20,000 from Sheikh Al-Fazi, and some of the money that we came together with, that were the seed money to start looking for land and all that to start the project. Suddenly one day, we realized that there was a meeting in Cherry Bay. And during that meeting, the topic of what do we do with the money we have in our coffers. And somebody came up with the idea that they should donate the money to 183rd Masjid, being the only masjid in the area, that it would have been a good thing to donate the masjid. So my father, among others, objected. He said, listen, this money was given to us by Sheikh Al-Fazi for the specific purpose of building a mosque. And now if we go and give somebody else it, that is not the right thing. We should try to grow this amount, this money that we have, and try to do something on our own. So that situation, it was eventually voted on and blocked. I'm sure my brother Hazrat Khan would remember more, because I think he still has the deed and all that to the land that Nur Ul Islam owns on Sterling Road. Those things, the 4 acres that are there was a 4 acre full of Melaleuca trees. And when we went and saw it, we said, well, we're going to have to do a lot of work, but it was a good price. I don't remember how much we paid for it now. We paid 200 or 180 or 160,000, somewhere in that range. We didn't have all the money, but eventually by the time we closed on the property, we were able to get all the money donated and the land was paid off for. And then many people were involved. Amir Khan, who was very good at operating machinery from his days back in Guyana. He used to operate heavy equipment in Guyana. I don't know whether it's on the sugar estate or where, but we were able to rent backhoes and big equipment to clear all the trees, and that's how Nur Islam at that site was started. Once we cleared the trees, activities started on the land. We were able to put tents. We used to rent tents and put it there. Even the madrasa was started in tents. Every weekend, Isa Baksh, you might have heard that name, Isa Baksh. Quite a few people would come on Sunday, would open up the tents, get beverages for the children, get snacks for them. It was something new for us to do, because we didn't have a venue that we can use, and the land served that purpose. There were 3 or 4 large jamun trees, 2 of which still survive up to today, that were our sort of meeting place. They gave us all the shade that we needed. They gave the jamun when it was in season, and we sort of felt we were back home in Guyana again. And Carl Ali, the kind of name I always remember, Zenora's husband, and Zenora and some of the others, they used to come, they would make doubles, they would make bara and chutney, they would make cook-up rice, they will do all, and they will sell it, and and they will raise funds, and that's how the organization actually started and funded itself. So as people moved into the area, they heard that we had the land, and everything else was thing. The next thing was, how are we going to put a building up on the site? And there were many meetings that were held. We went on for quite a time. I would say well into a year before we actually were able to build anything of substance. We ran into another problem, that we took the Melaleuca trees and we buried them, some of them. We thought that they will rot and we wouldn't hear about them again. But what happened in the areas where the modules are today, even that area was sinking at one time. As the Melaleucas rotted, the ground would sink down, and we have to build it up back and all that kind of stuff. We were blessed at that point in time. Who came into our midst was this brother Aziz Sher Mohammed. Aziz Sher Mohammed was from the brothers. They had big construction company in Guyana. The Nabi family. You've heard that term, Nabi? The Nabi brothers. All of them were builders. Up to today, some of them are still in Guyana, I think. But Aziz was a Nabi, was a brother, and he came along, and he was a contractor, and he was involved intricately with all the planning of the buildings and all that. And there was another brother that was involved, was Can't remember his name. But anyhow, a Guyanese fellow. He was a land surveyor. We had lots of meetings, and we came to an impasse at one point. We wanted to build a large building because we were patterning our plans on the big churches that we were seeing around us. And we felt we would build a large building that will serve for everything. It became obvious to us that we could not build a large building because we didn't have the funds. In order to build a large building would have required hundreds of thousands of dollars, or at least $1 million or more at that point in time. So somebody came up with the idea, why don't we build small buildings, several small buildings? And I don't remember whose ideas it was, but Yusuf Muhammad, being an engineer, and Sher Muhammad was very instrumental in some of those decisions. So we said, listen, why don't we build small buildings? We can afford to build small buildings, and then we can start from there and go and build up as we get funds. And so that was how the prototype of that building that you see with the golden dome, that was built. That building was built with a plan to build another building, a mirror image to that building. All the plans are there. Now there were two buildings exactly the same. The one that is standing there now, and just to the south of that one was going to be the other one. If you go into the building, anytime you look where the annex is, you will see an arch sort of imprint configuration. That was going to be the hallway that connected the two buildings to the two mirror image buildings. Yeah. Eventually, after we had substantially finished the building, it was decided that we'll just close the arch temporarily. And when we build the other building, we will open it back and it'll go. That building was built like a fort. Brother Aziz built that thing. He said, nothing is going to move that building. And we were reminded, and I don't know if you remember, if that came afterwards or soon around the same time, where the tsunamis in Southeast Asia, where there was a very stark image of in Indonesia, where everything was washed away except the mosque was still standing. The foundation of the mosque. In other words, it was built with such solid foundation that even the water couldn't move it. So he said, listen, we're going to build this way, and that's how we're going to do it. So we started, and I can't tell you the degree of cooperation that prevails when organizations start out. Everybody had their assigned task. Everybody was doing something. It was like busy bee, busybody. Everybody was doing something or the other. Some were going to the city, some were going to this thing, some were going there, some were painting, some were. So it was a very active time, and we were occupying the building when there were only 4 walls. There was no roof. By the time the roof went up, we were already praying inside. There were no windows, there were no doors. So it was, we were just going here, there, and everywhere. Those people who came from New York, they used to go to New York, meet people, say, brother so-and-so, and I don't remember the names of the people. Some of them were very instrumental. Lend us $20,000, lend us $50,000, interest-free loan, we'll pay you back, and and that's how come we got the money together and we built that building. A very instrumental person in that building was a brother by the name of Norman Yassin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Farida Yassin's husband.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He was part of a family, the Yassin family in Guyana. They were in charge of a trust fund.
Okay.
And he had some control over the funds, and he would make donations to us, in the sense that he will say, I will give you all $20,000, you raise 20,000. Or if you raise 20,000, I'll give you 20,000. And in that way, we got some more funds. Funds became available. And he used to come to meetings and help us to formulate plans and all that. So Norman Yassin, Farida's husband, was very involved in that. Your father-in-law, Yassin Mohammed, was very pivotal in dealing with Norman and dealing with so many donors. He was an excellent fundraiser. So he raised a lot of funds, and he went out and met a lot of people that we normally would not. So we were able to raise a lot of funds. I mean, I wouldn't say a lot, but we were able to raise the funds that we needed to complete that building. And once we started things, there was a lot of self-help.
Yeah.
There were people who we painted it ourselves. Sometimes we would subcontract the stucco. We would install the windows, the dome. The dome of the building, I don't recall the year that building was completed. It has to be 90-something. Because Alan had arrived on the scene by that time. Because Alan started to be involved in the financial part of it.
Okay.
Who do we pay? What do we pay? How much do we pay? How do we make maximum use of the funds that we had? And so we need an accountant for that. And Alan Baksh by that time was working with an aircraft company. Yeah. And when the time of constructing the dome came along, we were contacting various companies. There was not a lot of good companies at that time that could construct that thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, in later years, the minarets and all that for the Muttaqin Masjid was fabricated somewhere else in New Jersey or someplace, and shipped here and then installed. But we didn't have that luxury. So that dome was framed by Aziz in wood.
Oh.
Yeah. If you can picture something like an umbrella
Yeah.
with little pieces of wood making the frame,
Yeah.
and then came they wrapped it in I don't remember if it's aluminium or whatever it was, but it was then shaped, and then Alan came with his expertise from his company, and it was done in fiberglass.
Oh.
So that dome is a fiberglass dome.
Okay.
So once the dome was completed, it was painted, gold painted, and it was hoisted with a big lift and put there in place on the building. And the rest is history. Big opening, and we had, and there we were in the early or mid 90s.
Okay.
It'll take you to somewhere in that range.